Hello and welcome to another edition of Your Money, Your Life, Black Enterprises show on all things financial wellness. I'm Alfred Edmond Jr., Senior Vice President, Executive Editor of Black Enterprise, and this episode of Your Money, Your Life is being brought to you by Prudential. Listen, guys, today's topic really goes to the core of why we even started this show, I guess 5-6 years ago. I'm losing count now. And that's this idea, and based on my own experience as a person who I say, I'm not a financial professional, I'm a person who's adjacent to the financial profession because of me being a financial journalist. But one of the things that I've experienced in my own life and I've discovered over the years that I've been in this space is that now, especially today, most of the challenges we have with money, yes, financial literacy is a challenge for some places, and yes, understanding of stocks and bonds and mutual funds and real estate and credit and debt and etc. Though a place for that is still important, but it's really more about how we feel about money, what we think about money, what it symbolizes for us, and that happens to drive financial decisions. And I can say that for myself because even when my education about finances and money management increased exponentially, especially during my years at Black Enterprise, that did not always translate into different or better financial decisions. Well, our guest today is a perfect person to have on the show to talk about this because it's what he does for a living, but also he's a person who understands people. And so today's topic is legacy and values, building Black generational wealth. And our guest today is none other than Keita Cline, who's the Vice President of Business Development and Market Expansion at Prudential. Keita, welcome to the show.
Alfred, thank you for having me. It's my pleasure to be here.
Yeah, we did a lot of work to get you here, so we won't give the audience a backstory, but I'm so glad that we were able to work it out. So listen, before we get started, just talk a little bit about your personal journey, your professional journey to become who you are and what you do today.
Yeah, sure. I started out, I grew up till I was about 14 years old in the Virgin Islands and made my way to the States with my mom via Florida, and then ended up in Minnesota from there for schooling and stayed for about 20 years. Every good story starts with I met a girl. So, after that period of time and 3 kids later, et cetera, but landed in the financial services industry sort of, by accident. And if you talk to many people who are in individual financial services, you will realize that many of them kind of fell into it if it wasn't by legacy or otherwise. But nevertheless, I started my career as an underwriter in the life insurance space. And very early on, started to see for that particular tool, the power that it had in creating peace of mind, creating wealth, creating legacy, all the things that we'll touch on today. But it's so much bigger than that. And so that was my foray into the financial and individual financial services world. And it's been easily 17 to 20 plus years since then. And I know I don't look like it. Don't worry about the baby face. It's all good. But yeah, since then I have ventured into quite a path of having these conversations, and I'm really looking forward to this one today.
You mentioned your career journey and your personal journey from the Virgin Islands to where you are now, and I have more than one story that starts with a girl because I've been married 3 times. But my first story is a woman who's still we're very, very close today. We had 3 children together, and she's from Jamaica. And I'm just thinking, as you told your story, and as we've experienced not only with her name is Ruth and our kids, whether I was born and raised in a working poor family in a working class community on the Jersey Shore, went to college at Rutgers University, then lived in Brooklyn for 21 years, and and she's from came to America when she was 7,
Mm-hmm.
and then upstate New York for a while, and then Brooklyn. And at each of those places, and I'm thinking about even our kids and how they think and see money and wealth, and they're way better at it at their ages than I was at my age. But each of those things informs your values and what you're thinking about money. And often we're not conscious of it. And that lack of consciousness often results in not getting the results that we think we want when we're making financial decisions. As a professional, how does that inform your interaction with people as they navigate their money journey? And of course, everybody,
Yeah.
the catchphrase today is we all want to build multi-generational wealth, but we struggle with how to get there, even though we have more access to information than any generation that came before us.
Yeah, that I mean, I would answer that by saying you think about where you get your information from generally, right? It's gonna come from initially family, friends, people that are close to you. And sometimes you wonder, is that really the right information? Or you look and run with that, or you don't, or then you start in this world that we're in and you have access, as you mentioned, to all the information. And then you become paralyzed because you're like, should I do this or should I do that or should we move this way? So paralysis of analysis is a real thing. And some things historically that we've all been through, nobody wants to get caught in the trap like, oh, I did this and it didn't work out, see, I should have just kept it in the mattress, or I knew I shouldn't have done that, or you run into all these remorse stories. So that paralyzes quite a few people as well. And I think from there, that kind of sets attitudes and beliefs that gets passed along generation to generation. And so until you can start getting really good information, I'm really excited to see the trend of what's been happening across the community with folks coming along, getting the information and people actually moving, right? Taking action, to take the right steps to ingrain this type of information in the next generation and how to actually do something, with the information versus getting so much information and just not being so sure or frankly being afraid with what to do with it.
Yeah, I share your enthusiasm with what we're seeing around us now. Now we're seeing Black Gen Zers are like the first generation that are leaning into money management and investing in a way that I'm a baby boomer, and every generation got a little bit more assertive and confident. But surveys are showing that Black Gen Zers are the first generation to like, no, of course I'm going to learn about this. Of course I'm going to invest. Of course I'm going to take some risks. When my parents didn't even have access to the information to even think about it. And I had access to the information, but I came from a generation, like you said, it's like, don't want to make any big mistakes. You heard what happened to Uncle Jojo. You heard what
Mm-hmm.
happened to Auntie this with her money. And so we're in a good space where the access to information is meeting a generation that's, like you said, ready to actually take action with it and take some risks with it. And I think will produce better results generation over generation. One of the things I want to ask you about is mindset when it comes to this idea of legacy and values. And I want to emphasize to our audience, if you pass on the money or the assets, but you don't pass on a set of values, understandings with it, then that's when
Mm-hmm.
you have generations that may have something to work with, but don't really know what to do with it. And we've seen, this kind of gain wealth, lost wealth, gain wealth, lost wealth over the years. But one of the things that helped me was to kind of understand my own money personality. One of my mentees and an author whose book I wrote forward to had this 4 money languages, and I find it helpful. It was helpful to me to understand what I believed about money and the values that I took from my mother in particular. And then those values, I said, well, maybe that worked for my mother, but it won't work for me. And maybe it'll work for me, but it won't work for my kids. And that was this book, it was the 4 financial languages. And she broke down the financial languages in buckets. There are spenders, there are savers, there are givers, and there are, spenders, savers,
Investors.
investors. Yep, you're right. You got it. You got it. And that now, after reading her book, I began to understand that I came from a strict saver background. My mother was a single mother. She she knew how to manage some money, but she knew nothing about investing. Um, Giving was, I mean, she gave as a tither to her church, but she didn't have the kind of money to be like a philanthropist. And I didn't realize that as I moved into upper middle class income lifestyle, I was still operating like that person that didn't. I can't really get serious about investing. I can't really, because I still was carrying that saver value system that's valuable but not valuable. You can't build wealth by saving your way there. You gotta, at some point you gotta invest. You gotta build. You gotta
Right.
acquire. Talk to me about your the importance of this topic of legacy and values as key to building generational wealth, both from your own personal experience and from what you see professionally?
Well, the baseline of it all that underpins it all is that uh, you can build money to any generation, call yourself ultra wealthy, or even just passing on a few key things, passing on the wealth. And you mentioned the point that much generational wealth doesn't go beyond 3 generations, right? It could, that wealth or whatever it might be gone within 2 generations of working for it. And what happens is people don't talk about what the money is for, or what's being passed on is for, and these are the values. And that's the most important part. If I give you $1 million, we started, and mom and I worked for this, and we did everything, we set up these structures and everything else, but we never had the conversation about what it's for, what you should be doing with it. Here's where we think about it, and we want you to adopt those values, and then we demonstrate and show those values, right? Then you just take it and say, wow, mom and them made some money, and now I got the money, and then you're going to do whatever you want with it, versus driving those values even into the next generation, right? I've been fortunate enough to spend some time in places like Martha's Vineyard, where there is historical Black money, right? And people have homes that have been there for a generation, and so they're bringing their kids there, and their kids get to interact with other kids. You see that type of thing, and that's generational thinking. And that the idea and the value there is, there's community here, there's good community here. When you receive this now, you bring your kids so that they understand that community and perpetuate that, right? So the values are really one of the underpinnings of driving and maintaining a legacy and getting it from point to point. The mechanics, sure, right? The mechanics and the tools are there. That technical aspect comes into play when you're working with your advisors and starting to take advantage of these, but it's underpinning the value. You want to get the bag. You talk about the Gen Zers. You want to get the bag. You want to get the money. You want to do it now. But once you're there or starting to acquire it, what's the purpose? At first it's generally going to be, I want to take care of myself. I want to take care of my family. I want to meet those needs, and I want to be more than comfortable, or whatever the case may be, right? Whatever that initial goal is. But when that evolves to a point, it will come to, what? You've grown to now a point of beyond just that basic need, right? Now it's a kind of a point for existence and what this is for. So I think having those conversations and the underpinning, that's what underpins, not allowing the money rather to last multiple generations.
I mean, that applies on so many levels. I have this saying. I'm into my chosen sport is natural bodybuilding. The audience is for my show. I love that. Know that I'm really into health and fitness and weight training and trying to quote unquote get gains. And I always tell people, whether whatever your goal you're trying to meet, whether it's a nutritional goal, a fitness goal, or whatever, if you know your why, you can find your way.
Right.
Find your why, you can find your way. And so what you said about what is the purpose of the money, and that works not only on a multi-generational standpoint, as you talk about what you teach your kids and what they teach their kids, but it happens actually on an individual standpoint, that the people who tend to manage, save, invest their money more effectively are the ones who have some very clear ideas of why they're doing it. I remember teaching my kids that you got to have a purpose for. If you don't have a purpose for what you're saving for, you probably won't stick to the saving plan. Or if you don't have a purpose
Right.
for the investing, you won't stick to the plan. And so this whole idea of having these conversations, first with yourself, then with the people in your circle, and obviously with future generations, about why we're building the wealth. What is the ultimate mission? Goes back to values and legacy. Like, what does this family stand for? What do you want to accomplish in your life? What do you want to see happen, even if it happens after you're gone? And I find that the families, whether they start out at a quote unquote low economic rung or a wealthy economic run, the families
Mm-hmm.
that have that conversation tend to continue to make progress generation over generation. Has that been your experience?
Well, I tell you what, that's the part, right? And I hear it over and over, and sometimes you don't want to paint with a broad brush, but having family conversations, there is a generational thing to that, right? So if you're going to talk about underpinnings and foundational values, financial education and literacy, and we just talked about where some of that comes from, right? Understanding those money management skills, budgeting, saving, investing, those are crucial. And having that knowledge helps people make informed decisions, right? And it then reinforces strong financial habits, consistency, as you mentioned, right? Practices like saving regularly, avoiding the wrong kind of debt, and living within your means. Those types of basics are there that you mentioned. And then it comes those shared family values, because now everybody agrees, yes, this is what it's for, and you have the conversation. It doesn't become taboo. I truly, truly, truly believe. You mentioned that Gen Zers are really some leaning in. I would say, your millennials are also leaning in. And again, millennials are grown adults on the far end of the spectrum now. These are getting married. I'm a Xer, as we classify each other in these ways now. But nevertheless, those family values are being passed on, and they're living them out. They guide the decisions. So to have the conversation, intentional about having the conversation about what those shared values are, that's part of what happens with this. And then investing in yourself. You mentioned the book you read, getting the education. It's vastly available now, right? You can find out any information about anything you want in seconds with the device in the palm of your hand or sitting in your pocket or your jacket pocket right now. But actually spending time for what you want to learn and continuously growing and learning that information, then passing it on. Today, there was a podcast I just sent to my family over our group text. How many people have a family group chat now, to drop little information in there for that. And that particular podcast was specifically talking about living out of your abundance versus focusing on what you lack. If you focus on what you lack, you'll look past the abundance that you have. So things like that, those are values that you shared on. And so it gets back to the importance of teaching that, not just passing money to ensure that the wealth lasts beyond one generation.
This whole idea of talking about it in families and in communities is more near and dear to my heart personally, because frankly, I can talk about my educational, advancement from where I came from, and I can talk about, my kid's mother is very, very educated. They're really, multiple degrees on, how you high achieving West Indians can be, so they got multiple degrees. They're, obviously very hardworking. I come from a family that's very hardworking. But when all is said and done, the biggest thing that I think was different between me and my mom and my siblings and me and my kids is that we did talk about it all the time. Like I'm talking about basic stuff. Like when my mother said, "Who's leaving all these lights on and running up my light bill?" We just thought she was being, a mama and being difficult. But with my kids, we actually sat them down when they were little, like 7, 8, 6. and said, "Here's the bill. Here's the light bill. And here's what happens when we burn up all of our money leaving the lights on, and this translates into what do you think you're going to get for Christmas, and you want these new shoes or whatever." And by the time they're 10 or 11, they're telling us who left all the lights on to tell us with the household money, and there's things we want mom and dad to be able to do this thing. And so you just hit it so well on the head that often it's not that we don't have the right values as
right,
grown-ups, but if we're not sharing them with one another, we're not teaching one another. Like you said, now we have access to podcasts. There are several great people who I've had on this show who I just follow their Instagram because they really teach well on Instagram, or YouTube or whatever. And those types of resources, my mother's generation, she didn't even know what a stockbroker was, much less have the money to be able to afford to sit down with somebody like that. But today, we have the information, and so this values conversation is really important. And like you said, the average, I know 8 or 9-year-olds that can explain pretty effectively what a stock market is and what are you doing when you buy it. And that was unheard of for me as a 9-year-old.
Yeah, I have to agree 100%, right? It's, I think one of the things that the sooner you can start giving kids the money lesson, and it starts there. We're talking about generations. And, for some people, uh, and this is Keita talking, right? Some people, the generation that would experience the benefit of what you've been building might be the next generation,
Yes. Yes.
right? So you might be putting something in place that this next generation will experience when it comes to fruition. But what has to pass on for it to actually come to fruition, again, is those values and the conversations that you have about what it's for, and what the underpinning of everything you're building is for, to some degree. So, uh, yeah, I know we gave our kids checking accounts as early as we could remember to help them start thinking about those types of things. And, and as much as you can give kids an opportunity to do some kind of money management, lemonade stand, all the old school stuff we used to do. I used to sell uh, gift paper to try to get, prizes. You remember those things back in the
Yeah.
day. I'm dating myself a little bit, but, those types of values are what you come up working hard. All those things never go away, right? But
I would agree.
working smarter is one of the things that I think many of the younger kids will tell you now.
Oh yeah. One of the key lessons I did with my kids, my oldest daughter was a beast by the time she was going off to college. I was like, oh my God, I need to treat you well because you might be the one to take care of me someday. But this idea of I helped them to understand the whole idea of saving, and at that time 401ks were relatively new, and it was like at the end of every quarter, I'm going to see how much you saved, and I'm going to match a certain part of it. To kind of disincent, to keep you from like saving it and spending it right away. So they would
Right.
at least learn delayed gratification, which is a critical value of multi-generational wealth creation. That everybody has to learn how to delay gratification. So I would say, listen, every 3 months, I'm going to see how much you save. And if you don't spend it down as fast as you're saving it, I will match it. And
Right.
of course that created a discipline about, no, I'm not, I'm not trying to spend this money right away because
Trying to get that full match.
oh yeah, oh yeah. So in the time that I've left, is we could spend 3 hours talking about this. But what would you say if you had to identify three things that you wanted your money, your life audience to think about and or do to begin this conversation about legacy and values and passing it and communicating it to others in the family and to future generations with the goal of creating multi-generational wealth? What would be two or three things that you would strongly advise, at least to get people started?
Yeah, I would say, talk to the family openly about money. Here at Prudential, we've launched a strategy, and I call it a strategy because it's not just a program or initiative, that we're calling Blueprints to Black Wealth. And it is a key focus on getting more wealth building tools and generational wealth building tools into the hands of Black Americans. It's a shared value strategy. We've been doing so much work in the community over a number of years. We're based in Newark. Prudential is a pillar in that Newark and in that doing that work. So, but it combines that with now the business case to get these tools in the hands of more Black Americans. And so we just launched a piece specific to that, specifically about how you can have the conversations with the family, right? How do you talk across generations and, engage with someone who might have some older thinking, or more ingrained thinking. I don't want to call it older thinking for lack of shaming anybody or anything like that. But how do you engage in those family conversations? So talk openly about money, make that a habit, start having the conversations with kids at their various levels as well. Talk to your parents. I just talked about generations. What's going to happen down the road? I'm square in the sandwich generation, as many of the Xers are called. Right? I got kids who are going off to college. I got parents who are getting a little bit older, and we're having to think about their latter life living and what's going to be happening there. So how do you manage both of those, but still make sure you're taking care of yourself? So we have to have those conversations on both ends. Mom, dad, what do you have set up? What should we be doing? What happens if you need care down the road? How do you want that to happen? Which of us in the family should be should be you want to handle in the case of a power of attorney type situation. Tough, maybe scary, nerving conversations for folks, but they're tools to help you breach the conversation, right? And then, like I said before, and as we've been talking about, talk to children. So you'll see the theme there: have the conversation across generations, right? And then a couple of other things. One, early financial planning, right? Talk with an advisor, of course. Get with somebody who this is their job, right? You mentioned you're into fitness. I'm sure you've had a coach at some point or another, right?
Absolutely.
If you're gonna get a coach for that, you're gonna get a coach. You know a lot. I'm sure there's a lot you can research on your own, but that coach holds you accountable. They also give you new ideas and help at least refine some of what you're working on. You're the strategist at the end of the day. In most instances, you tell them what direction what you're trying to accomplish, but you're the person who will give them and then say, help me put this together because this is what I want this cake to look like when it's finished baking. Okay. And then estate planning. And when I say estate planning, some people think about, oh, what am I passing on from, or otherwise. No, it's currently, yes, will, power of attorney right now, living will, those basics. We don't have time to get into it today, but one of the worst things that could happen to a family, and you and I have seen it happen in our community as well, is somebody dies intestate, meaning without a will, and it has to go to the courts to probate. It takes forever. It's so costly, and there are tools that you can set up to have these things in place where it becomes a much smoother process, a much more private process that you can pass on wealth or pass on what's supposed to happen, with assets or otherwise. But then it's the stuff that's supposed to happen while you're alive as well. So life insurance, wealth transfer, those types of things are all a part of that estate planning tool. So those are just some of the key things I would say to start with. Start having the conversations, look at your basic estate planning, and really seek out and interview a financial planner.
I really want to circle back to one of the points you just made, in part because you are a financial professional, and you talked about the importance of a professional who can help you navigate this once these conversations started. Going back to my experience as a fitness enthusiast, I've done it both ways. You're right. There's a ton of information out there on fitness and diet and training and exercise, and you could spend hours on social media, podcasts, etc. And so, speaking as a competitive natural bodybuilder, my first time go around doing it, I just like, oh, I'm gonna figure this out, and I did make progress. So I want to make, but the second go around, I got a coach. Actually, it was a longtime friend and mentor of mine that was like, he had asked me to help you out. I helped you a long time ago, and I got to tell you, Keita, we made more progress in 2 years toward my goals, especially competitively, than I had made in 7 years of me figuring out on my own. And now, why is that? Is it because I'm stupid? No. First of all, it's not what I do for a living. Second of all, I do have a job and a life and a family and other things to do. It's not my sole focus. And so one of the things I tell people all the time is even the best in the world, Tom Brady when he was still playing, or Venus Williams and Serena Williams, they had coaches. They never didn't have a coach. And
Right.
it's not, and also often what they do, the coach can't play tennis as well as Venus, but Venus is not a coach. She needs a coach to maximize her performance. I say all that to say, in a gratitude for you even taking time to do this show, is that one of the things that used to be a big part of the Black Enterprise mission was we had this first generation of Black financial professionals who their biggest lament was, yes, I want to help all of my clients, but I have a special emotional reason to want to help the Black community, and they don't want to talk to me, for lots of reasons. There are cultural barriers too. And so a big part of our mission was we got to help get more visibility and more Black people in the financial services industry, because the industry needs it to be more effective to help Black communities, and Black people need to have people they can trust and they can talk to. So
Yeah.
fast forward today, it's a very gratifying whenever I get to interview someone like you because I can say mission accomplished. But the other message to the audience is that despite everything we've said about all the information out there and all the stuff you can find online, it's not a substitute for having a coach that can say, yeah, you can figure it out on your own in 10 years, but maybe if you sat down with me, what it would take you 10 years to figure out, you can figure out in 10 months and come up with a plan to actually do it. Because my thing
Right.
is, I'm an ideator, so I'll have a different idea every 3 months. I need, I need a coach to kind of know this is the plan that we are
Lock in. No
locked in.
squirrel. Nothing over there.
Yeah, exactly. Stop running after the next shiny object, which of course in this day and age, because of all the information, there's
That's
shiny
right.
objects everywhere. Every 6 months. Oh my God, it's crypto. I need to do that. Oh my God, it's real estate. I
Option.
need to do that.
Yeah.
You know.
No, so yeah, being in this, like I said, being in this industry for so long, you see just some of the changes, and what's happened is what is one of the biggest things is the speed of information and how fast it can be delivered and how you can quickly access it. That is more of a changer than many people realize. But I also want to say, as far as getting a coach, and again, I'm not an advisor. I work in our corporate offices and I drive this strategy. But one of the things I specifically want to say is, in thinking about getting a coach, many people will say, "Oh, I don't have anything. I don't want to." Some people will say that. I should say, I don't need to go talk to an advisor. There are resources that will meet you where you are. Okay, you might not need the ultra wealthy advisor if you're thinking of that person, but there are counselors and advisors who can work with you if you're looking at your student loans and debt and what you should do with it. That's an advisor. That's a part of your team that you can add. And it's not a one-stop shop in many instances, depending on where you are. You want to be thinking about putting a team together, and it may not come under one house, but you might find the person who helps you with your home mortgage and wondering about how to manage your debt. And then you find the other person who helps you with those legal aspects, right? So it's almost become a specialist type model that you're looking, because you're not going to have a heart surgeon, work on your bunion.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So those types of things, when you think about that, think of building a team. And when you're looking for advice and you're putting that advisory group and team together for yourself, so you know where you can reference depending on where you are. So just nobody's there to judge you based on decisions that were happened before. That sometimes can stop a lot of people
Right.
from starting to take that step to go actually talk to somebody, because they feel they're going to be judged, whether you made some decisions or something didn't work out before and you have to address that. Whatever the case may be, you got to start somewhere. And I implore your audience to just start having the conversations, because you're not in the boat alone.
And that circles back to where obviously the topic of the whole conversation, which is legacy, values, and goals. And I tell people that understanding why you're doing what you're trying to do as individuals, as in a family, that becomes not only your North Star to your GPS, it's your destination. But the other thing is what you said, then you don't have to feel shame or guilt at quote unquote mistakes. How many times you're driving someplace, your GPS has set a destination, and you get off course and it just says, we're going to course correct, rerouting you. And
That's it.
there's no shame. And often you learn things along the way when something you tried didn't work. If you remove the shame and the guilt from that, because
Right.
all these new things come at you, then it's like, no, it didn't work out, but look what we learned that's going to help us get towards this long-term goal. But once you have, your legacy and your legacy goals and your values set, and everybody, because of shared communications, is on the same page. And I tell people, on the same page doesn't mean agreement necessarily. It's just that now I understand why mom did what she did, because I understand what our family goal is. Now I
That's it.
can explain to my mom why I want to do something different in the context of a shared family goal. And maybe she didn't understand, but when you say, "But mom, this is going to help us to get to there,"
Mm-hmm.
then even the traditionalists will open up and say, "Okay, well now I can see why." But the shared family goal, the shared legacy, is what helps keep things off course when you have so many different pieces of information coming at you and so many ideas that may be generational, traditional, emotional, but you have that North Star that keeps everybody on track.
Yeah, Alfred, I mean, look, the wealth gap is real, right? And we know that there's an opportunity right now. I think it's an important moment. You got things that are trending in the ways that work for us to keep attacking that, that gap. Black employment is at a record high. That in trends that we've seen, income levels are rising. You know, Black consumers that from some of the research that we've done, we know you want to be engaged. You, like we said, we talked about, we're seeing it, all the content and information that's out there. And in the most recent survey that we did, like came back that 80% of Black Americans say they want to pass some type of wealth to the next generation and have a strong commitment to their financial freedom in later years. So, the desire is there. And when you address and talk about maybe mistakes or challenges that you faced in the past, guess what happens? Most of the time you come out of that and you accelerate. You accelerate from there because it's kind of a now type phenomenon.
Yep. And now the next person knows because, again, so much of what my kids have been able to do, whether it's managing their credit or investing. In fact, I've learned, it's interesting. I'm the business and financial journalist, but often my son will give me better advice than I gave him when he was younger. So, you're absolutely right. It's a very good time to lean in. It's a very good time to be talking about legacy and values. And of course, it was the perfect time to have you as my guest on Beyond the Hype. Listen, if people want to kind of, keep up with what you're doing or keep up with resources that you think they should pay attention to, I don't know how active you are on LinkedIn or other social platforms. What's the best way for people to keep up with the information that you share?
Yeah, I would say they can engage overall with Prudential and this our Blueprints to Black Wealth strategy at Prudential.com. Very easy. We're about to celebrate 150 years. Prudential is, and like I said, many years in the community and driving this. And our president of our business has committed to this, and what a step to take in this day and time. So I'm very proud of that. And that's where you can go, Prudential.com, and you'll be able to see a lot of the information and good places to start as well.
Excellent. Keita, thank you so much for everything that you do, everything that you'll continue to do. And thank you for being my guest on this edition of Your Money, Your Life.
Thank you.
Another great edition of Your Money, Your Life. As promised, this episode of Your Money, Your Life is brought to you by Prudential. I'm Alfred Edmond Jr., Senior Vice President and Executive Editor of Black Enterprise. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time.